Hello and welcome to Unbore's first ever digital event. My name is Jess McCulloch and I will be hosting this 1-hour Pecha Kucha today. Just waiting for a few more people to enter the room from the waiting room and we can get started. Hello everyone, welcome to this event. Thank you for joining. Welcome to Unbore's Pecha Kucha. And the theme of this evening is Art, Design, Science, Future. Having researched the integration of science in the arts and design for 6 years, I believe that critical thinking and collaboration between disciplines is highly important to help question the crucial issues of today, improve lives across the world, and spark new ways of thinking and living. To give you some context, after earning a BA Honours in History of Art and completing my Masters in Design, Culture and Society, I've worked in many marketing and writing positions in the arts, architecture, tech, wellness over the last 5 years. I'm now living in Amsterdam and working for a conscious startup that offers psychedelic experiences. In my free time, I lead the editorial and content strategy for our bioart foundation, Unbore. And I'm also writing a book about speculative design for a conscious future. So having run nearly 40 digital wellness events for Synthesis since lockdown happened, I wanted to create a digital event for Unbore where our bioart community can come together. If you're not sure or never been to a Pecha Kucha before, a Pecha Kucha is a presentation format founded in Japan where each speaker presents with 20 slides, which last for exactly 20 seconds. So it's a 20 by 20 format. Usually featuring speakers from the creative industries, this visual format is a really engaging way to discover fascinating projects and spark our imagination in under 7 minutes. Now we're just waiting for a few more people to come into the room. So if you're joining now, thank you so much for joining. This is Unbore's Pecha Kucha, Art, Design, Science, Future. Now I will pass you over to my wonderful friend, Gabriella Sancaletti, who started Unbore in October 2018 and asked me to join and come on board just a week later. We met studying a bioart course in Leiden University, and it's a privilege to have to work with such a brilliant mind to grow our organization. So I'm handing over to Gabby now, who will tell you a little bit more about Unbore.
Hi everyone, I'm Gabby and I'm the founder of Unbore Collective. As just mentioned, it's a nonprofit organization that started in October 2018 and we became legal foundation in March 2019. So we're just over 1.5 years old. And as just mentioned as well, it all started with us studying in Leiden University, specializing in art and science and biodesign. And basically during the course, we realized that whereas in the Netherlands, this course is already very much established, there are still a lot of places that lack this. And we had this idea to create an organization with a main goal of bringing art and science discourse to the places where it doesn't really exist or it's still very underdeveloped, but also bring it to wider audiences online in a way that's very much approachable, easily understandable, and can become part of the bigger popular culture and bigger creative culture. So before that, we were more focusing on physical events, so doing small exhibitions, mainly featuring young designers and artists, or talks. But of course, as everybody this year, we had to reinvent ourselves, and that's why we decided to do this first digital Pecha Kucha event for Unbore. That's it, I guess. Just back to you.
Thank you so much, Gabby. It's been such a journey for the last few years, but we're really happy with the direction and the growth of our community, to have so many people interested in the relationship between art and science coming together. So our organisation is actually run entirely by volunteers, and any donation, big or small, would really help us to keep running and make it possible for us to run more events like this in the future. So we'd be really grateful for your support, and you can donate by using the donation link in the chat. If you haven't already donated, if you have donated, thank you so much. We really appreciate your support. So Gabby will drop the link in the chat. And before we jump in, I have some guidelines for the audience. Just a request that if you could please keep yourself muted, that would be really good, just so that the person speaking will have like full clarity on what they're saying. And we'd also love to see your faces. So if you feel comfortable to have your camera on, please do, but ensure you're on mute, so that there are no interruptions when people are speaking. And you can put yourself on mute in the bottom left of Zoom. And another note is, please note that this event is being recorded. So if you would like to remain anonymous, please change your name, which you can do via the participants tab, and stay off video if you would not like to be part of this recording. There's also a space to ask questions at the end, and I know there'll be lots of burning questions from you in the audience. So if you have anything you'd like to ask a particular speaker or the group as a whole, make sure you post it in the chat, and we will find those questions at the end, and we'll unmute you. You can unmute yourself and ask the question yourself. So there will be space to ask questions at the end, not in between the speakers' talks. So without further ado, I'd love to jump in. I'm so excited to see that there are over 100 people joining us this evening from all over the world. So thank you so much for being part of this. And I'd like to introduce our first speaker. Now, Kuang-Yi Ku was born and raised in Taipei, Taiwan, and has been based in the Netherlands since 2016. He graduated with triple master's degrees in social design, dentistry, and communication design. Formerly a dentist, Kuang-Yi Ku is now a bioartist and a social designer. Kuang-Yi's work often deals with the human body, gender, queer theory, sexuality, interspecies interactions, and medical technology. And his work aims to investigate the relationships between technology, individuals, and the environment. His creative works have been awarded multiple prizes and featured in countless international media, including New Scientist, The Huffington Post, Zine, and Vice. Kuang-Yi also founded TW Bioart, which is in Taiwan. It's a Taiwanese bioart community. And that was founded to stimulate the fields of bioart and science and art in Taiwan, which is where he is speaking from today. And it's currently 2 a.m. in the morning for him. So thank you so much for joining us. And let's all welcome Kuang-Yi.
Hi, everyone. So I'm Kuang-Yi Ku. Thanks for the invitation from Unbore. So I can start my presentation to share some of my experience. So I'm Kuang-Yi Ku, just like the host introduction. So formerly a dentist. Recently, I work as an artist and designer at the same time. And you can see the multiple degrees in the slides. I from dentistry to design. So basically, most of my work are related to medical technology. So today, I want to share some of my one of my work which is related to traditional Chinese medicine. So you can see the picture. Some of the medical shop in Asia is selling the ingredient, which is from endangered species. So the international media keep blaming on Chinese-speaking people love eating a specific endangered animal's organ. So it causes a huge problem because it's a conflict between disappearing Asian medical heritage and preserving endangered animal. So why people want to eat this kind of animal organ in East Asia? So basically, people believe in eating a specific organ is good for our health in East Asia. So for example, if you eat animal's penis, it's good for virility. So it's quite a kind of culture myth in a way. So the most famous one in this context is tiger's penis because tiger represent a masculinity and strength in East Asian culture. So how to solve this problem to save tiger because tiger is endangered and also not to stop the Asian medical heritage. So what I was thinking is to look for many different animal which symbolize sexuality in different culture. So for example, oyster is quite worldwide famous because some of the scientists discover a certain kind of chemical compound in oyster, which is good for enhancing the sexual performance. And also a lot of people believe in eating it is good for virility. And not only the aphrodisiac food, for example, the octopus is quite famous in Japanese pornography because it represents and the sensational part and also the erotic quality. So I was collecting these animal which symbolize different sexuality in different culture, and I want to propose to extract the DNA from these three animal: tiger, oyster, and octopus, and cut the DNA off and edit the DNA and put all the DNA into one cell, and then grow a lot of this cell by tissue culture. And after that, we can have a group of the cells and put the cell into a 3D printing machine and 3D print a hybrid penis, which is culturally stronger than tiger. So what I propose is a super powerful synthesized penis, and I hope it could have the potential to replace the illegal poaching of tiger. So, but my collaborator, Chinese medical doctor, told me that it's because Chinese medicine is not like Viagra, one pill for all the sexual dysfunction. It's more like personalized medicine. So we should design different remedy for different kinds of sexual dysfunction. So we should not only have one design of the hybrid super penis. So I work with several Chinese medical doctor, and we design different hybrid animal organ for different kinds of syndrome of sexual dysfunction. So it shows the personalized medicine in the context of Chinese medicine. So I also use sculpture to try to materialize the shape of the hybrid animal organ. Uh, so because the shape of the animal organ is quite crucial in Chinese medicine because people believe in eating it is good. And so in this scenario, so people go to the Chinese medical clinic, and after the diagnosis, the doctor design a certain kind of animal organ for the specific patient. And after the sketch, and the doctor bring the sketch to the lab. So use genetic modification, synthetic biology, 3D bioprinting, and tissue culture to create the animal organ, alongside with a series of herbs. And the patient receive the herbs and the animal organ and bring it back to home and soak in the rice wine and drink it every day as a kind of eating ritual. So it's a very traditional way of eating these things. So I'm also wondering how the general public react to my crazy idea in a way. So I work with a cultural institution, and we hold a participatory performance to engage the public and see the reaction from the audience. So they went to a fake Chinese medical clinic that I built. So we got a lot of different reaction and feedbacks. It's very interesting because from my perspective, this project is designing a new tradition, which is continuing the core value of the old tradition, but do no harm to the natural environment. And I think it's not only happening in Chinese medical culture. For example, in Japan, they also kill dolphin and whale for eating culture. And also in Spain, they have the traditional performance of bull fight, and it also do harm to the bull. So I think Tiger Penis project could be applied to other culture with this kind of conflict. Yeah, that's it. Thanks.
Amazing. Thank you so much. It's such an interesting project, and I'm really happy you could share that with us today. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Kuang-Yi Ku from Taiwan. All right, moving on to our next speaker, introducing Lyndsey Walsh, who is an American artist, designer, writer, researcher, and cultural worker based in Berlin. Lyndsey's work is within the realm of biological art and biodesign. She holds a bachelor's in individual studies from New York University and a master's in biological arts with distinction from the Symbiotica Centre of Excellence at the University of Western Australia, which is an amazing bioart centre, by the way. And Lyndsey has exhibited her work internationally and been published in multiple publications, and is a contributing writer for Clot magazine as well. So Lyndsey's work explores the cultural and social quagmire of disease, identity, the body, human and non-human relationships, and speculative narratives of the future. She's currently the social media manager and one of the members of Unbore Collective. So shout out to Lyndsey for all of her hard work. And currently she's a visiting scholar and researcher at Humboldt University in Berlin, which is a collaboration with the UNICISCAT Cluster of Excellence in Germany. And she's an adjunct professor in the ITMO in St. Petersburg, Russia. So let's all welcome Lyndsey, joining us live from Berlin, Germany.
Thank you, Jess, and hello there, everyone. I'm Lyndsey. I'm ready to start my presentation now, Jess. So I'd like to start off by telling you a little bit about myself. I'm going to go through various stories, and they're going to be quite quick. But throughout my entire career, I've been fascinated by topics from both art and science. And for a long time, I sat at the middle of this disciplinary crossroads, unsure of what path I really wanted to take my work, and whether that would be art or if it would be in the direction of science. And while I found those processes of research in the sciences to be exciting, I was really disenchanted by this disconnect that science had with society and culture. And from listening to these stories about the history of science, I ended up really falling in love with how we tell stories. And this kind of carried over to this attraction I got towards art in the way that art is able to tell stories of all kinds to all different types of people. To me, stories are what connects us to each other, as well as to other people, organisms, and places. And stories are this catalyst for activating our imagination and shaping the world around us. And it's through these stories that we end up finding purpose and meaning. And we're creating stories all the time, even if we aren't really aware of it. And so as an artist, I see myself primarily as a storyteller. I use my stories to ask questions about the world around us, disrupt narratives, as well as imagine and speculate on entirely new futures. And the stories that I'm currently drawn to are stories that emerge from this realm of science and technology and how this intersects with culture and society. So for my first story this evening, it's about how science has shaped our understanding of the history of life. For a long time, the classification of organisms has been based solely on their physical remains. Dead bodies were compared and their differences were used to determine what could be considered biologically or developmentally normal. And then meaning was assigned to these observed differences. So in my artwork Heads Will Roll, I decided to question the process of assigning meaning through the classification of physical forms. I created a series of animations that applied curatorial practices of Rosalind Krauss and Ives Elaine Boys to bring a postmodern perspective to the scientific research being done in evolutionary zoology. And when I started working with living materials at Symbiotica, I kind of continued to search for stories that I could critically reflect on in my art making. Stem cells became this material fascination for me as they were really uniquely embedded in this narrative connected to cancer. And this narrative with cancer seemed to continue to haunt the field of stem cell biology and regenerative medicine in this really interesting way. Stem cells were first identified and characterized by Dr. Leroy Stevens, who studied them in relationship to a type of cancer called a teratoma. And teratomas are tumors that are made up of germline cells, and they're often taking these grotesque forms and are known to grow teeth and hair. In my practice, I found that teratomas remained an important figure in modern stem cell research. And yet we don't talk about teratomas or the cancerous material potential of stem cells, hence why I created my work, Return of the Teratoma. Through the devices of found footage and horror, I imagined a fictional world to house a teratoma that I spent a year growing in the laboratory. And this teratoma was made from human embryonic stem cells and human mesenchymal stem cells. In creating both my teratoma and my horror film, the story gave way to a feeling of pity towards the way stem cell entities are treated. My teratoma was not as grotesque as the ones you find in an image search, but ended up being regarded as what I think is cute. And by placing them back in the human world outside the laboratory, it was overly apparent how displaced they'd become from its creator. This theme of pitiful displacement continued over in my work, The Hanging Drop, where I brought living stem cells into the gallery to create liminal sculptures. By entrapping them in an upside-down liquid nutrient medium, I doomed these cells to create forms until they had depleted the surroundings of their nutrients, thus highlighting their neediness and reliance on this techno-scientific body that housed them. When exhibited in tandem with Return of the Teratoma, the works created a dialogue about the efficacy and morality of working with stem cells. I employed my narratives to challenge my audience to ask how we can interact with these new and evolving forms of life emerging from the laboratory. And I aim to really question the power structures being created between the materials and the researchers who exploited them. This line of questioning has spilled over into my work with genetically modified algae. While in research, there's a desire to use genetic modification techniques to exploit biological systems and improve industrial practices, as an artist, I see it as crucial to reflect on the perspectives of the organisms whose bodies that are being exploited and controlled. And this is the motivation behind my work, Revolution, which has also been inspired by my nostalgia for video games from my childhood, like Guitar Hero and Dance Dance Revolution. As an artist, I wondered how I could use the narrative of gameplay and performance to reframe these notions of control and agencies over microscopic living organisms. By creating competitive dance battles with light choreography for different strains of genetically modified algae, I aim to humorously question the human expectations towards the behaviors of non-human organisms. The results have shown that algae really don't care at all about the dances I've created, and they would often ignore my choreography regardless of the associated behaviors they had with their corresponding genetic modifications. Working with algae has taken me down a new artistic explorations of co-authoring stories. Considering the impact of COVID-19, I'm working on a new workshop series set to debut in January 2021, which creates a speculative space for individuals to act as a governing body, exploring the future of biosecurity and biosurveillance based on the conditions of their country. This work has been inspired by Australian artist Olivia Tartaglia and Alex Tate's Bureau of Meteor Anxiety, as well as Pei Yingling's work, Tame is to Tame. My hope is for my upcoming project to facilitate a moment of contemplation and critique, a narrative creation that allows the participants to speculate on what the post-pandemic future will be and what the ethics of potential measures taken by their governments. And while I've told you many stories in this brief talk, I have one last story to share. Earlier this year, I published an article with Nautilus magazine, which declared my medical status as someone who has a BRCA1 mutation. My mutation is responsible for a tumor suppression gene, which means now that I have a very high statistical probability of developing cancer as I get older. In my article, I discussed how genetic mutations like mine come with serious political, social, and economic repercussions. And based on my own experience, as well as the studies published by public health research like in this chart, it's overwhelmingly apparent that many healthcare systems are not adequate enough to handle this new type of emerging disease identity. However, I left my article on a cliffhanger, and I will be continuing this line of exploration in my upcoming residency with ITMA University's Art and Science Center in St. Petersburg, Russia. I'm very excited to figure out what the story will be as it interweaves my personal identity with genetic privacy and sets out to push me to challenge my relationship with my body and my impending potential sickness. Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much, Lyndsey. It's amazing that you can share your personal story like that. And I'm really excited to hear more about your new project on biosecurity. So yeah, thank you so much, and really beautiful presentation. So moving on quite swiftly, given the Pecha Kucha style, moving on to our next brilliant speaker. I'd like to introduce you to the internationally renowned and brilliant artist, Koen Vanmechelen, who has been working across a multitude of disciplines and is a highly versatile thinker situated at the confluence of art, science, philosophy, and community. As an eternal migrant, he travels the world looking for answers to fundamental questions that touch on issues that are both timeless and acutely relevant today. Identity, diversity, globalization, human rights. He weaves those answers that are always works in progress into enigmatic artworks and projects. His quests and interdisciplinary projects invite other migrants to work together and create an awareness and movement of communities around the world. Together, they reflect on the global legacy of the human animal and explore the different ways we choose to live and evolve together. So far, his work has been shown in more than 80 solo shows and 220 group exhibitions worldwide. We are honored to introduce Koen Vanmechelen, live from Belgium.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for inviting me. I'm Koen Vanmechelen, so I think we can start the presentation. I will take you through all this. So this is not a chicken. It's a piece of art. It's actually crossbreeding between a chicken from Belgium, France, and England. So chicken mainly are known for purebreds, but this one is actually a hybrid. And I take you on a trip in the history of the chicken. The first chicken lives at the feet of the Himalaya and is the red jungle foal, like you see here on this image. And this is the primal chicken, the one who provides us with all the chickens around the globe. And here you see a schedule of the chickens who are living today on in the world. And in every country, they started to make a chicken that tells something about the country. So there is a lot of diversity of chickens and domesticated chickens in the world. If we look very closely by mutation and by manipulation, chickens have become more actually than a product, a symbol of a nation. And this is the poulet de Brest from France. It is a red in the head, it is white in the body, and it has blue legs. So it's the French flag. And I was wondering, is this right? That we put a frame around a living animal. So I started in 1999, my Cosmopolitan Chicken Project, which is actually crossbreeding chickens around the globe, love between chickens in the world. So I took Belgium and France on the border of Belgium and France and started to crossbreed. So now I have 25 crossbreed chickens. If you do this in art, you know, you're not telling something about the chicken, you tell something about us, but you tackle questions as globalization, multiculturalism, genetic engineering, and cloning. So I went back to this red jungle foal that lives at the feet of the Himalaya, as I told you, and then I saw that every little piece of this animal we are using, every little detail. So my big question actually in this is, how far can we go Are we using it? Are we abusing the chickens? Also with this image, when I compare our world with the big egg that we live on, are we fertilizing the world, or are we ruining the world by doing this? Because actually we are creating monocultures. So I went back to my first sketch, and if you see here, the red jungle fall is actually the cause of the whole chicken world. You can compare it with the Adam and Eve of the chicken world. And by them, the whole world started to exist. And now we are coming into a point that we probably has to breed them on each other to start something new. And that's why I made my open university of diversities. So in my studio, I invite people around the globe, scientists, social entrepreneurs, biologists, to talk about what can hybridity gives us. What is crossbreeding? What are the advantage and the disadvantage? In this picture, you see me and Joja Kasiman, which is one of the most famous geneticists in the world. He's a human geneticist. And he told me, this project, we have to look at it as a scientist, but not to change it. And I think looking in this transparent bowl of a new egg, what is happening inside of the chicken? Because I saw so much diversity on the surface by crossbreeding it, 25 generations long, every time a new country, a new chicken. So I was wondering what's happening inside. So together with the scientists and biologists, we saw actually that there is now the book of genomes. My chicken has 13 million DNA. So the question is actually, what does it give us, the 30 million DNA? You have to know that a normal chicken that you could buy in the supermarket only have 5 million. So the copy of the DNA is increasing 3 times. So I started to make my planetary community chicken, which is actually the cosmopolitan chicken with the 13 million DNA, to crossbreed it with a local commercial chicken. And by bringing diversity and productivity together, you create a chicken that is sustainable to live in the communities. In this picture, you see an exhibition in the National Gallery in Zimbabwe. So actually, the chickens are running in the gallery. And this as installation, I made it together with the people from the community in the middle of a center of Harare. And this one is the farm that I built in Ethiopia. In Ethiopia, we made a farm of the planetary community chicken under the title, The Global Only Exists by the Generosity of the Local. But because by bringing actually this cosmopolitan chicken with a local chicken together, you create something between local and global. And here you see the 2 scientists, Tadele Desse and Olivier Hanot, who are working on this project, and is the biggest project against poverty in the world, because chickens can live, in this case, in the poorest communities. So on the level of thinking, this is again another sketch. So what you think can become global, and you take the complexity together, and then you can create something for a new generation. Because, you know, in my opinion, it's bringing electricity and firewire and the umbilical cord. If you bring this together, you can create something new. It's the connection that you have to make with each other, which bring you to another level. And with this kind of statement, I can end my presentation, because I believe that every organism at the end is looking for another organism to survive. And this is the biggest statement I think we can make today. Thank you so much.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for bringing such an amazing global project that is really creating solutions for different communities as well, to our Pecha Kucha. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Moving on to our next speaker, I'd love to introduce you to Mary Maggic. Mary is a non-binary Chinese-American artist born in Los Angeles and currently based in Vienna, Austria. Their work spans amateur science, public workshopology, performance, installation, documentary film, and speculative fiction. Since 2015, Mary's research has centered on hormone biopolitics and environmental toxicity, and how the ethos and methodologies of biohacking can serve to demystify invisible lines of molecular biopower. Completing their master's from MIT Media Lab, the Design Fiction Research Group, their work has won multiple awards and been exhibited internationally, including at Philadelphia Museum of Art in the US and the Science Gallery in London in the UK. And Mary's a current member of the online network Hackteria, open source biological art and laboratory theatre collective Aliens in Green, as well as a recent contributor to the Radical Syllabus project Pirate Care. Donations from the public would be greatly appreciated, and you can go to their website to donate directly. So I'm really pleased and honoured to welcome Mary Maggic joining us from Vienna, Austria.
Hi, everyone. Let's get started. So my name is Mary Maggic. Thank you for the introduction. And I'm an artist trained in biology and media arts and sciences. So today I wanted to tell you about a world we all live in called the astral world, which is an alien landscape that is colonized by hormones. So today I want to talk about how I came to realize this. Well, in 2015, I started a research project called Open Source Estrogen, looking at all the ways our bodies are controlled and managed at the molecular level. When you type in estrogen into Google image search, you can see that our primary relationship with estrogen has always been through the pharmaceutical industry and the corporate sciences. And at the same time, hormones exist already all around us as a state of environmental toxicity, with petrochemical and agricultural industries producing molecules that permeate every aspect of the planet, causing unprecedented levels of physiological, neurological, and reproductive mutations. This happens because the estrogen receptor is highly promiscuous, meaning the opposite of selective. Furthermore, this receptor is shared with almost all animal taxa, and so that's why we see frog, fish, and bird populations in decline due to endocrine disruptors in the environment. This is the collective mutagenesis of the astral world. But just as the body can be stolen, it can also be reclaimed. If our world is indeed an alien landscape colonized by hormones, what does it mean to decolonize our bodies and environments? What kinds of strategies can we do as citizens in a collective struggle with the human, non-human, and the planetary? Well, there are many terms to describe my practice: hormone hacking, freak science, estrogen geeking, but the term I align most with is public amateurism, meaning learning, doing, and failing in the public sphere, therefore creating critical spaces for collective queerings of the status quo. One of the first hormone hacking protocols I explored was the use of transgenic yeast biosensors for detecting endocrine disruptors. With these yeasts that act as extensions of our bodies, I could finally visualize the molecular semiosis that happens when a xenoestrogen comes in contact with our estrogen receptors. And because I was running workshops around the world called EstroFem Lab, I created a mobile lab for traveling with my transgenic yeast and all of my reagents. Oddly enough, I never got in trouble with airport security, even though I was obviously carrying very sketchy stuff. And another mobile lab is what I like to call the extraction lab. It's for extracting hormones out of the environment and out of your own urine using a DIY column chromatography method and peristaltic pumps. Currently, the mobile labs are both being exhibited at Walker Arts Center as art objects. So the result of the urine extraction is this brown sticky stuff that you see at the bottom of the tube. After the workshop, we actually take turns smelling each other's hormones, which are now pheromones that activate an ancient and evolutionary response in our brains. You either love the smell, you hate the smell, or you smell nothing at all. The same urine protocol was used in a 10-minute speculative fiction film called Housewives Making Drugs, where trans women, who are the stars of their own fictional cooking show, teach the audience at home how to extract their own hormones in the kitchen, taking your bodies into your own hands. I wanted to offer a vision where feminist concepts of body sovereignty could be applied to biohacking and biotechnology, and that science could be performed by and for queer people. At the end of the show, the audience gets on stage and we all take shots of hormones together in this catchy estrogen song and dance. So continuing to bridge hormones and cultural discourse, I came across an article where 2 species of fish were hybridized to create a hermaphrodite species that was called a hopeful monster in the title of the publication. With all of the toxicities that we are exposed to every day, why can't our bodies also be considered hopeful monsters? For example, this blogger writes, I don't think it's right that the government is putting birth control pills in the water supply, making all the men gay because we need both men and women to propagate the species. So it's very easy to slip back into this homophobic and transphobic and even xenophobic discourse when we're talking about endocrine disruption. So I created the Molecular Queering Agency, a fictional service that guides participants through the process of queering through an audio-visual projection and a urine worshipping ritual. So the participants put on oxygen masks that contain hormones, and therefore they are consenting to their own colonization. So in order to neutralize fear and panic, I present to them a 3-step process for living in an increasingly queer world. Toxicities. You live in an alien landscape that is colonized by hormones, but you are already alien with plastic in your blood and your urine. And lastly, do you want to be more alien than you already are? So in this permanently polluted world, we see that not all bodies are created equal. A doctor looks between your legs when you're born and decides if you're a male or female. And for intersex, trans, and queer people, their bodies are often unjustly policed and pathologized by medical science and institutional gatekeeping. So I created a work in progress called Genital Panic, where participants walk into a staged gynecology office, sit in the chair, and they make a 3D scan of their own genitals to be submitted into an online anonymous database that is crowdsourced from the masses. I asked myself, what does a queer feminist population study look like, where the authority of science that has always policed gender and sex normativity was removed and came from the bottom up rather than the top down, and therefore making spacious room for all disobedient bodies? After all, we are all glitches of our material consumerist culture. What we eat, what we buy, drink, and inhale creates different combinations inside of our bodies. In fact, we are not the fixed and stable constructs that we're told we are. It's really about what kind of inclusive future we want to build here. We do live in an estro world, but it can also be our estro world. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Your work is really important, and I love how it bridges gender and queer feminism into the public realm. So thank you so much for sharing, Mary. Moving on to our final brilliant speaker today, I'd like to introduce you to Natascha Nanji. Working at the intersection of anthropology, art, and theatre, Natascha Nanji's creative work sets the scene for narrative journeys that are infused with speculation. Using dialogue, prose, improv, and performance, she forms fictional spaces for dialogic encounters. Her work explores the dramas circulating through scientific discoveries, lesser-known mythologies, historical figures, fictional characters, and found objects. For some context, Natascha is a graduate of the RCA Critical Writing in Art and Design MA program. She writes for art journals, magazines, museums and arts organisations and research agencies, and she's performed in multiple venues around the UK. Natascha is presently involved with running the Horse Hospital, which is a DIY art space in central London. And she's also a co-editor and publisher of Lay It On Thick, a collaborative publishing project, which brings together artists, writers, and cultural labourers from South and East Asia, Europe, and North America, writing and drawing around the topic of desire and erotics. Natascha will be doing a storytelling performance today, live from London, England. So welcome, Natascha.
Hi, hello, everyone. Yeah, thanks everyone for such amazing presentations. And I'm ready to go. As the latest pandemic swept across the globe, industries paused, restaurants and bars closed, the abattoirs spilled over with animals saved from electrocution because of broken supply chains. But as soon as they were fattened, they were slaughtered or had their babies aborted because there was no room inside those slick warehouses designed for maximum output, where minimal space was allocated to a life cycle. Students were sent home to be schooled by parents. Workers stayed away from offices. The ones in luxury jobs were tapping away at computers in their homes and carried on talking to colleagues, confronted with their own image, all day, every day. Other workers, those deemed essential, braved the city. Cleaners, nurses, doctors, public transport drivers, supermarket staff. Fewer vehicles moved around urban roads. The air smelled cleaner. Birds chirped loudly. Even in the center of the metropolis, their calls reverberated across the brick facades. The unprecedented seismic quiet was a phenomenon mirrored in other countries and offered a unique opportunity to study the Earth's interior. Researchers at Mount Etna in Sicily listened to the quiet hum of the mountain, hoping to learn something new about its behavior. One by one, borders closed, travel between countries steadily ground to a halt. Airlines only carried supplies, post and VIPs. Travel and coaches ran less frequently. We could go nowhere. To stave off the irritability and looming civil unrest among the masses who demanded to have access to travel, a group of scientists were deployed by the state to create a technique to allow for intraconsciousness travel, that is, to travel inwards, to experience another consciousness, that of an animal or a plant. The scientists involved initially believed their work was to be designated as a democratic form of introspective entertainment. Soon, the clandestine tactics of the state and their allies revealed that the technique was intended to replace specific memories, so that eventually people would have no recollection of ever having been able to travel beyond a 50-mile radius of their dwelling. The scientists and their closest affiliates absconded from the facility, taking their research and data with them to set up a clinic located in a former World War III bunker on a small island. They now operate as interlopers, administering the interconsciousness treatment to fugitives who seek them out. They find themselves living and working in a community with an unfamiliar set of relations, like many other ancestral relatives who had formed similar intentional communities, such as Findhorn in Scotland or Oroville in India. And so Studio Swan is the container where my research is arranged, the stage for me to play out scenes that might cultivate deeper understandings of and relationships with the complex knot of problems we are confronted by, problems that require and demand that we reimagine our relationship with the environment, which in turn means reimagining ourselves, placing ourselves and our thinking as inextricably entangled with the non-human world. There are many questions this premise poses around becoming with a plant or an animal for a period of time, around consciousness, transformations, and the usefulness of a speculation such as this. And more recently, Adrienne Marie Brown's writing in her book, Emergent Strategy, has been helping me answer some of these questions about the importance of radical possibilities. How can we learn from other life forms? Can Studio Swan help combine the intelligence of many to achieve ongoing group adaptation? Science fiction is simply a way to practice the future together. The plots that unfold in Studio Swan are woven and spun like the drama intrinsic to any complex system, always full of intrigue, collaboration, paradoxes, deception, and collusion. Investigating these dramas is a technique I explored in a performance around the events that took place in November 2018 after Professor Ha Jiankui reported the birth of 2 babies whose embryonic genes had been altered using the CRISPR-Cas9 tool. Following the announcement, the majority of the scientific community branded Professor Ha as a rogue scientist who'd been working in isolation. In retaliation, Professor Ha had informed he'd informed approximately 60 scientists of the work he was doing and called this his circle of trust. To illustrate this circle of trust, I extracted the key scientists within the circle and researched their connections and interests within and outside of the circle of trust. Studio Swan is also an opportunity for co-thinking and co-feeling, a method I practiced with a group whilst on a residency organized by the Live Art Development Agency held on Jersey Island. So it was on top of one of the principal Paleolithic sites in Europe, where we literally played out a scene through improvisation, concepts, and propositions from Studio Swan by inhabiting characters physically, emotionally, and intellectually, bringing into being something I read about the Caribbean Film Collective's methods, of which they write, perhaps the central purpose is to discover what we never knew we knew. By hearing what we say in moments of improvisation, we suddenly see what we have been saying, what we have been sensing. And this method of intimately co-creating has also been used to imagine some of the backstories of the characters of Studio Swan, such as Destiny, and she sits on reception at Studio Swan. Destiny is a calling that creates a beautiful journey, writes Adrienne Marie Brown. And it was with a new friend that I sat down to write about Destiny's backstory. My friend asked, is Destiny human or AI or both? Is she empathetic? Does she like to read literature? And I asked my friend about her significant relationships with animals. And she told me soon after that her family had built their new home in Bangkok. Housekeepers would complain they never had a restful night's sleep in the guest quarters. And eventually they called a monk to inspect the energies of the land around the house where the house was built. He told them the site had once been a Naga palace, the Naga being a divine water serpent. Soon after, snakes would appear often in passageways or near the pools of water in the garden. Months later, builders came to work on the house and discovered a 3-foot python coiled up behind one of the walls. After removing it, the housekeeper never complained and disrupted sleep and has been with the family for years. Destiny was no stranger to change.
Thank you so much. That was a really beautiful journey into your storytelling and thought process. Thank you again for joining us. So that is all of our wonderful speakers today. And now this is the moment for you to ask any burning questions you have. I'll have a look at the chat and see if there are any questions in there. Someone has said, reminds me of, are there any questions there? Sorry, I can't see. There's a question here from Lotta Pet. Would you like to unmute yourself?
Oh, hi, good afternoon, everyone. And thank you all for these lovely presentations. They've been very inspiring, so thank you so much. I had a question for Mary Maggic. I was wondering about the status of the alien genital database, if it's already accessible online, and also if there's an opportunity for people to upload their own AGDs outside of your installation of the College office.
Thanks so much for your question. Actually, it's a work in progress. So I'm trying to get more funding to continue developing this online database. So far, we've created like a rough version of the software. We would like to make it open source so that people could potentially just measure themselves at home instead of waiting for a workshop or an exhibition. But yeah, I mean, I have huge plans for this project. Unfortunately, the funding is kind of the limiting factor at the moment. But thank you for your interest.
Thank you for that. We've got another question here from Franca. If you'd like to unmute yourself.
Yeah, hello. What is my question? My question, I've lost it now.
It was about teratomas.
Yeah, I mean, there was a recent U.S. Supreme Court decision, that cited that certain genes can't be patented, and so I just wonder, in your consideration of your teratoma development, what's its relationship to patenting, and is there? Do you want to patent it or copyright it, or?
That's a good question for Lyndsey.
Yeah, so this is actually a big discussion about boundaries between what is considered natural and not natural, because patent law in the US specifically is around what could be made in nature and what can't be. Since teratomas do occur in nature, once they're made in the lab artificially, this is kind of blurring that boundary. My project unfortunately didn't touch on this too much, but there are some great artworks. There's a Biotechnica by Jennifer Willett and Jason Knight that kind of more explored this consumerist notion on it, as well as a really big influence on my piece. One of the examiners of my master's thesis was Melinda Cooper, and her work, Life is Surplus, does a really good job touching upon sort of these notions of patent laws with stem cells and how it all interacts with each other. So I would definitely check out those artists. I was focusing more on horror, so I didn't get into the patent law part of it, but yeah.
Interesting. Thank you so much for sharing. I'm just seeing if there are any more. There's one more question in the chat from Darlene, if you'd like to unmute yourself.
Yes, hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. As artists who are using new and emerging technology, software, since there are sometimes high learning curves and limited access to technology, software, and even time, right? Seems like there's not enough time in life sometimes to learn all this stuff in order to be, able to create what you want to do. I'm just curious, like what some of you are doing. Are you reaching out to collaborators, finding consultation, or even sitting down and trying to learn how to use all this various technology and software yourself? Because thank goodness for this technology, it just, I think, allows us to open new doors for further expression.
Beautiful question.
Thank
you so much. I wonder if maybe Koen would like to respond to this?
Yes, I think it's a very interesting question, because I'm thinking that new technology was always the case when artists are working. I mean, you need the new technology to tell the new stories. And for me, for example, I always solicitate to partners who can use this technology. For example, for knowing if the chicken is better than the one you started with, you need actually the very sophisticated technology to read the genome. And this is how we come to the conclusion that the genome of the chicken that I breed was much better, and has more chances to survive in rough areas like communities in Africa or South America. So these kind of technologies are very important. Another project where I'm busy on is the llama project. So today in my studio, I actually have the llama where they make them nanobodies from, who is going to make medication against COVID, against coronavirus. So it's in cooperation with the University of Ghent and the VIP. So for that kind of knowledge and technology, you need very specific tools, but also people who has the knowledge. As an artist, you can have the inspiration and the thoughts, because the specific project that I'm talking now with the llama, I started 20 years ago with the llama. So there was a very long journey with all these scientists to come to this kind of conclusion. So yes, it's in different ways that we use technology.
I think that's such a good point about collaboration. It's really a meeting of minds between different disciplines that can make this work possible.
Absolutely.
So yeah, really beautiful process. And we actually have time for one more question for Kuang-Yi. I know it's like 3 in the morning.
Yeah.
If you want to just...
I'm still awake.
Lotte, would you like to unmute yourself and ask your question?
Yeah, thanks for asking me again. If there are other questions, of course, people can ask this. But in any case, I was very interested by your work, and especially that people could actually digest or drink the the soup of the tissue culture. So I was wondering if there is any relationship between food and medicine in your work, or is it seen as just medicine, or is there another dimension to it when you look at it from a gastronomical level?
I think it's a very interesting question because it's about the definition of Chinese medicine. Because from scientific perspective, traditional Chinese medicine sometimes was regarded as a kind of pseudoscience in a way. However, I have collaborated with several medical doctors of traditional Chinese medicine, and they told me there are three different kinds of herbs, three different kinds of definition of the ingredient of the medication. So the first one is in the ancient Chinese medical book, they listed the herbs or animal organ as a kind of remedy. And in the contemporary society, the scientists also discover a certain kind of chemical compound in the animal organ. So it was proved by scientific research method. For example, rhino horn is one of the examples because there is a specific chemical compound which is good for health and for a specific disease. And the second definition is there is a list in the ancient medical book of China, and however there is no scientific proof, but the Chinese medical doctors still prescribe the remedy to their patients. So it's the second one. And the third one is there's no any documentation in ancient medical book, and there's also no scientific proof. So usually people just eat it as a kind of culture myth. So tiger penis is the third one. So I picked the most challenging one as an example because it's super difficult to solve this problem because people just believe in it. So there are several different kinds of examples for your question. So I think the first one is because there is a proof from scientific research. So it's more like medicine in a way, and it's easy to find an alternative way or a substitute. But in the culture myth, one is more like a certain eating culture in tradition. So, but it's also very interesting to see alternative medicine or traditional medicine, not only in Chinese medicine, in Indian medicine or in South America, they all have their own medical system in their traditional culture. However, it could not be recognized a kind of medicine from a Western scientific perspective. So how to find a balance between the traditional practice of alternative medicine and the contemporary mainstream Western medicine, I think is very important because it's not a black and white binary choice. It's more like collaboration among all of those different kinds of medical system. Yeah, I hope I.
Yeah, thank you so much. You explained that really well. Thank you. Yeah, it's a really interesting subject, isn't it? It's about like respecting the cultures with their heritage and traditions, but finding ways that are like eco-friendly and not damaging to living endangered species. So yeah, I think it's a really interesting point of view and perspective to bring. So thank you so much. I think that rounds up all of our questions for today. And I'd just like to say thank you so much for all the speakers today. You've been so interesting bringing your projects to the table. I've loved listening to every single one of them. And thank you as well to our team that are behind the scenes that have been helping make this event possible. As I mentioned, any donation, big or small, would really help Unbore, and we're grateful for your support. So I'll drop the link in the chat now. If you feel compelled to help us out with a donation, we'd be really grateful. And we'd also like to say, please follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn, where you can actually find the social handles of all of the speakers from today as well. So go to Unbore Collective on Instagram, and you can search Unbore on Facebook and LinkedIn to find us. And we update content really regularly, and you can also sign up to our newsletter via our website. And I really hope you enjoyed this evening. If this work resonates with you and you'd like to get involved with Unbore, we would love to hear from you. We're a community of creatives and we're always building our collective. So if this feels like your tribe, if this feels like something that you want to get in touch with us to talk more about this, then please get in touch and email us at info@unbore.org. So that's it for today. Huge thank you to our speakers, thank you to Gabby, and thank you to everyone that's helped us make this event possible. I hope you go away from this evening feeling inspired and look into more creative projects that use science to envision the future. Thank you so much.